What's going on, guys? Welcome back. Today we are actually finishing up the SQL part 3, and then we have one more after that. We'll have part 4. So we're going to go ahead and go down here and start the boxes so we don't have to do that later. Start that one and then start that one. All right, now let's go into it. So first things, subverting query logic authentication bypass. This is one you're going to see all the time. This is the one that you're probably most familiar with and one that you've heard the most about. So before we get started, hit that like button, hit the sub button, especially if you've seen some of these before, because I'm curious what your guys' favorite SQL injection techniques are, because everybody does a little different typically. All right, so first things first, we have this little admin panel. And you can see we can log in using admin password. So they give you the password so you can actually see what it looks like when it's a successful login. That's very nice. If you ever have a pen test and you're doing a pen test and you work with the customer, if they will give you a valid credential to use, or if you register for it for a site or whatever, it's much easier to do these if you know what a valid one looks like, because you're not always sure what you're looking for at the time if you don't know what a valid one looks like. So let's go into it. The page also displays SQL query being executed to understand. So this page actually will give us the SQL query, so we don't have to guess as to what the query is. It just gives it to us, which is really nice. This is not common. Don't expect to just see exactly what query you're running. There may be some outlying sites that still do this, but it's very uncommon that you're going to be able to break it to give you the exact command that, or the exact query that's being ran. So here's the query. Select everything from logins where username equals admin and password equals password. Makes sense. Pretty easy. Now, this page takes the credentials and then uses the AND operator right there to select records matched to the given username. So it says username is this and password is this, right? If it equates to true, then we're in. So you can see if we say username is admin and password is admin, login failed, it's false. So how can we make this true regardless of what we put as a password? Well, here we're going to start talking about SQL discovery, SQL injection discovery. One thing to talk about here, and sorry, my monitor dimmed on me. One thing to talk about here is the URL encoding. So if you see up here, well, they don't have it up there, but there's times where you'll be doing SQL injection in the URL. When you're doing that, the URL does not take characters like this. So you need to URL encode. So %27, %22, These are URL encoding. You can use CyberChef to URL encode your payloads. You can use all kinds of things, but make sure you understand that you need to URL encode it at times, because if you don't, then you'll be putting these in and you'll be like, why isn't it working? Now, some people may say, well, why do I need to do that if I'm putting them in the username and password field? You can do that. But a lot of people want to do it up here in the URL because you can just sit there and make a payload and change it and try again. You don't have to sit there and go back and retype the username and password. That's why. Okay, so now how do we make it true? Well, we can start with an OR injection. So we would need the query to always be true, right? So we say admin or 1 equals 1. This will always be true because it will check if it's admin or if 1 equals 1, right? So an example would be true because you're basically saying it's true, right? So if we inject that below, we say select everything from logins where username is admin or 1 equals 1. Well, the query would then say and, because if you remember, we're inserting this into the query. And we'll say and, so it would say and password equals whatever you want it to be. That will always be true, because if username is admin or 1 equals 1 returns true, which is always true, then the password is something, it doesn't matter because you're giving it a true statement. So that's one way to do it, right? Now this, I'll just tell you, this is pretty, I don't want to say outdated, but this is going to be pretty well known. So you're going to have usually you're going to have defense against this. They're going to have sanitization, things like that. So now we go to authentication bypass with the OR operator. So we're doing the exact same thing. The only difference is you can see here, we put that OR in there. And then here you notice they said not admin or 1 equals 1 and password is whatever, and that's not true. Why? Because it's not a valid user. So it's equating to a false query in total. So what that means is it's going to say where not admin or 1 equals 1, so false, it's going to start with false, and then the next one's going to be false because the username and password is false. So it's going to go false and false. It's not going to ever get to that OR statement. So what we need to do is we need to actually change that and say, hey, we have where username equals whatever you want it to be, or 1 equals 1, and then we need to put it in the password field also where it's whatever you want, and then 1 equals 1. So we can't just put it in the username field, which is right here. You need to put it in both, or else it's going to equate 1 to false and 1 to true, which equates to false in the grand scheme of things. Okay, so now try to log in as the user Tom. What is the flag value after you successfully logged in? Okay, so one thing to do, just FYI, they have this nice cheat sheet here. It's very nice. You can see, easy way to do this is just save this or copy this so you don't have to do it again. Go here. Now, we just have to change, and the IP is 83.136. So we just say 222. 83.136. 136, 253, 251, and then 250. Yep, I did not put another period there. 253, 251, and then the port is 36386. So 36386, 36386. The username is root, so that should be good. I believe so anyway. Okay. All right, so what we need to do, that is how to log into SQL, which doesn't help us at all in this, so that's my bad. I wasn't paying attention to the question. It's asking us to log in as Tom. So what we're going to do is go down here and go to this website. And hopefully it's got a login. There we go. Inlane freight. Now, we need to log in as Tom. So we're going to say Tom. So that's the username. And you can see if we go up here to, and we know Tom's a valid user because they're asking us for it. So that's one thing to keep in mind, is that if we didn't know Tom's a valid user, then we might have a question. But what we can do is we can take this or 1 equals 1, right? And we can say Tom, and then we can say, go down here to the password, and we can just say quote space control V, hopefully it worked, or 1 equals 1, don't save. And you can see here, okay, from logins where username equals Tom and password equals whatever or 1 equals 1, login successful as user admin. So we're logged in as the user admin, which is not what we wanted. We want to access the user Tom, right? Okay, so we need to log in as Tom. So let's do this. And if you remember, in order to log in as the user Tom, we had to take, or as anyone, we had to do this. So we had to do this, and we'll do the same thing, but we'll change it to Tom. And then we'll do the same thing down here. It doesn't really matter what you put down here as long as it equates to true. Don't save. Okay, and it says here where username equals Tom or 1 equals 1 and password equals admin or 1 equals 1. Okay, so once again, we're logging in as admin for some reason. Let's see what are we doing here. What's the issue? Because we're logging in as admin, which is great. We don't want to log in as admin. We want to log in as true, because you can see here that's what they're giving us, is log in as admin. So let's do this. Let's log in as Tom, but we'll say 1 equals 1. But we're going to put a password in there that's whatever. So that way it equates to true, but we're never giving it the option for admin. There we go. So we never gave it the option for the password, because what was happening is it's just saying true, true, move on, and that's admin. So we're going to actually say So if you didn't see what I did, which hopefully you did, all I did was say Tom or 1 equals 1 to equate to true. And then I said, and the password, whatever. It doesn't really matter what the password is. So that's why it says ASDF, whatever. So now we can go down here, submit our answer. Nope, not that. Didn't want the help center either. Come on. There we go. All right, we got our streak going. Great. Mark it and let's go. Okay, so now we're using comments. So this is actually one thing I really like to do in SQL is comments. So you can use comments to basically get rid of the rest of the query. So what was happening in some of the previous examples with Tom was it's reading the rest of the query. So it's saying Tom is true and then it's reading the rest, right? We can comment all the rest out. We can just say Tom equals true, end of story, end of query, right? And that's what we're going to do with comments. So you can see here they're saying select username from logins, and then they use this double dash here to select usernames from the login table. That's just a comment. It's not executing anything, it's just a comment. So that's really nice. Now you can see these comments are inline comments. So that means like right here, if I wanted to do select and then I put a comment right there, I would use this. But if I'm doing it after, just that. So that's the difference between the comments. So you can see here, you can also use the hashtag. They talk about that here, that there's this one, hashtag, and then inline comments. Okay, so you can see here, they said auth bypass, the same thing we just did, but with comments. They would say admin, and then they would just do the comments. The reason they do that is because they're saying select everything from the logins where username equals admin. That's it. End the query. I don't need to check the password. Just end it. And that's what they're doing here. So this is very common. That's not going to work, but it is cool to see, right? It'll work if you use comments correctly. What I'm saying is the specific one they're using where they just say admin, comment everything out. They'd usually have sanitization for that, but comments are a very big part of SQL injection. So SQL supports the use of parentheses. So here's an example where they used it, and see how they did it. The whole query had parentheses in it. Well, when you comment out this, when you comment the admin out, look at that. There, you didn't finish the parentheses. You didn't close it, because what's going to happen is right here. Let's see if we can find it. Yeah, right here. See how they have the comments here? Well, you didn't close this parentheses, because what it's saying is with these comments right here, it's saying forget all of this. Forget everything here, because what they did is they hashed the password here. That's why there's a hash there. So you can forget all this. Well, the problem with that is that you opened a parentheses here. You need to close it here. So you can see they change it and they add a parentheses and then the comments, and that actually closes that loop and then allows it to run. So make sure you know how to close that. Make sure you know SQL queries. But the one thing I don't like about them teaching this here, they teach it very well. I don't mean that. What I mean is, I'm going to kill my dogs. But what I mean is that the problem is a lot of times you're not going to get an error back. You're not going to get an error back. You're going to get nothing back. So when you do when you do a SQL injection, so you wouldn't know that parentheses is there, right? So that's why you need to know what to test. That's why you need to know this exists, because there's times where you're going to have to check this, right? You're going to have to, well, it didn't work like this, so maybe if I put a parentheses, maybe it'll work if I do this, because you're not going to know the query on the back end, right? This is why when you're pen testing, I tell people all the time say, I want to do a black box pen test. I want to do it like the attacker does. Okay, great. You know what the attacker's going to do? He's going to sit here and he's going to try them all, because he's going to eventually find the one that's right. You know what you could do? You could just go ask the SQL database admin as a pen tester, hey, will you just tell me this query? Show me what it's doing. Because if you just show it to me, I can just tell you if it's got SQL injection, right? I can look at it. I can craft a payload very quickly. So don't get hung up on doing it like the attackers. If they'll give you information, it'll save you so much time. What is impressive? What makes it impressive that I can sit here and guess every single SQL injection attempt versus somebody that goes, hey, can you just show me your SQL command and I can just create a payload, and if it works, great, we know. There's nothing more impressive about it. They both know SQL. So that's why don't get hung up on that. I see that a lot. Just ask the information if you're doing a pen test. It saves you a lot of time. Okay, So now you can see the login failed due to a syntax error. They added that parentheses and boom, it worked because the rest of this is commented out, meaning none of this is valid. It's just a comment. So now it says, here we go, select everything from logins where username. Yep, that's the new one. Okay, so now it says, click here to spawn the target system. So there's a new target and it says login as the user with ID 5 to get the. All right, welcome back, guys. Sorry about that. My dogs were going nuts, so I had to stop the video for a second. Okay, so where were we? We were trying to query above. Okay. All right, so login as the user with ID 5. Okay, so we know that if we type anything, right, we want to see what the error is because we know we have error-based SQLi here, so we can actually look. Okay, so here's what the actual quote or the actual thing looks like. Okay, so we know username equals blah 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 whatever admin and ID equals greater than 1. Okay, so we need it to equal something greater than 1, which is admin, right? So we know that. So now we can go back and we can just say, let's just do that, blah blah, haha. Doesn't really matter, right? And we want to say, we want to give it an or statement, or ID equals 5, right? Now, what we're doing here is we're just simply saying, hey, if it's equals 5, we're good. But we saw before on the quotes, or I mean on the query before, that it had a parentheses in there. So we need to close out that parentheses. If you don't close it out, you're going to just basically do nothing. Okay, and then we're just going to say password, doesn't matter what you put, don't save. Okay, so now it says haha or ID equals, okay, ID equals 5, and that's fine. That's because I have a space in there, so I just noticed I had that space in there. Okay, and we can say or ID equals 5, and we'll try it with no password and see what it does. Okay, now it says you have an error, just check the manual, da da da. All right, let's get rid of anything. Let's not put anything in there. So, and then, so we're not trying to, because it's an invalid user. Let's try and do, and I'll put a password. It doesn't really matter what you put. Okay, and we don't have a password here, so we'll have to actually figure this out. All right, so I wish it would not make me go back, which I could do it in the URL, but okay. So we can try other comments as well. So not the $, but maybe they're sanitizing those quotes. So we'll do a hashtag here, and we'll just say, hey, password. Doesn't really matter what you put the password, right? Okay, there it was. So what it was they were sanitizing those quotes. Perfect. So login successful as super admin. Okay, so user 5 was a super admin, which kind of makes sense, but not really. But okay, either way. Login is to get the flag. Oh, here's the flag. Okay. So all we had to do was tell it that we were going to use user ID 5 because username blank or ID 5. So either one, and username blank doesn't exist, so ID 5 is the next best, and then the password, whatever, doesn't really matter. Okay, so there's our, give me my little streak, there we go. Okay, mark complete and move along. Okay, so union clause. Okay, so this is what I was talking about earlier in some of the earlier videos. If you guys watched some of the earlier videos, we were actually talking about the union clause and how the columns have to line up. I didn't really explain it very well because I didn't have any visuals. This actually will give me a visual to show you what I'm talking about. So union, what is a union statement? So here's a good example. I'm not going to read it. I'm just going to explain it. So here they're selecting everything from ports, the table ports, right? And they get code, city, those are the columns. Code and city are the columns, right? Well, what if they wanted something like this? So they say select everything from ships and they get one ship, Morrison and the city, right? Well, what if they want both of these, right? Yes, they could do two queries and say, give me exactly this, select everything from ships, select everything from ports, but you could combine them. So for instance, what if I had an HR system and a, I don't know, a finance system, whatever, right? And they both have usernames and work IDs or something, right? I could just combine them and make one large query that does it, that gives me both of them. But in order to do that, you can see select everything from ports, union, and combine that with select everything from ships, and it combines all of the answers. This is very common. Like I said, what if you have databases that just have segregated data, but they have the same types of data? You can just do 2 union statements and boom, 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 and it'll print them out together. So that's really nice. The problem with it is that you have to have the same amount of columns. For instance, if this table had 4 columns and this table had 2, you can't do a union statement because it's not going to print out correctly, right? So how do we get around that? Well, you can see here they're telling you that you have to have even columns, right, with an equal number of columns, which is true. So you have to have that. You have to have those same amount of columns, but there's a way to get around that, and we'll show you. You have query results in error. So this is what it looks like when select city from ports. So they only selected the city, and then they selected everything from ships. So if you look, if they only select the city, but then they select everything from this table, the columns don't match up. They're selecting 1 here, they're selecting 2 here. The columns don't match up. You get this error. The use select statements have different number of columns. Really nice, but you may not get an actual error when you're doing this, right? So when you're doing this, you want to make sure you have the correct amount of columns. How do we do that? How do we validate them? Well, what we can do is put this junk in there. So what that means is we can give it data and say, give us this data with this data. And the point of this, you'll see, is we're giving it junk, quote unquote, because it's not in the table. We're giving it the information. So we're saying select everything from products where product ID equals 1. Okay, pretty easy, right? You're going to get the product that ID equals 1. And then we say union select, and we're saying username 2 from passwords. So we're providing it the data. We're giving it a number 2. So we're giving it the data. It's not in the table. We're giving it to it. And then you can see we say select username 2 from passwords. Well, if we had more than that, we would say select username 2, 3, 4 from passwords. So that's how we're supplying those columns for it. There may not be a column named after username and passwords, right? Those may be the only 2 columns in your table, but we're giving it these columns to match the same one. So it would look like this. If there's 4 products, right, we have to have those same amount of columns or else we can't combine the information. So we say select everything from products where product ID, that's this, everything from products where product ID, whatever. Then we say union select username, right, from the password table, but we will only get the results if we match the same amount of columns. So we said 2, 3, 4. This is 1, 2, 3, 4. So it provided 2, 3, 4 for us. It put it in the table for us in the response, not the table. Now the reason this is important, you might be saying, why would I ever do this? It doesn't make any sense. The reason it's so important is because what if they block or sanitize your commenting and all that other stuff, right? Union is a way that you can also pull data. So that's why they're giving you this information. So let's go see if we need to get another box here. Yep, spawn this one, and we'll get rid of this one. Okay, so now what we need to do, we need to actually go and there we go. These come up very quickly, actually. I'm pretty impressed with that. Paste and go, see if it's an actual website. Okay, this isn't the website, this is an actual database. So what we're going to do is we're going to say connect to the above MySQL server with the MySQL tool, find the number of records returned when doing a union of all records in the employees table and all records in the departments table. Okay, so what we need to do is port was 33894. Okay, 33894, 94,237. 94,237, 53, 3, perfect, and root and password, perfect. Okay, so now we can say show databases, even though it kind of gave it to us. For some reason that doesn't look right. Okay, so we have employees information, so we're going to use employees. Thank you. Okay, show tables. Okay, so we have departments. They told us which ones to do. So find the number of records, return when doing a union of all records in the employees table and all records in the departments table. Okay, so we need to see how many columns are in each, right? So we're going to say select everything from employees table, right? Select everything from employees. Okay, and we see we've got a lot of records, but looks like we have, whoops, I'm not even going to go to the top, but it looks like we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 rows, or 6 columns, excuse me. I can't tell if this last one is a column or not. We'll see. So now we're going to say select everything from, and the other one was departments, right? Departments, yeah. Select everything from departments, just because we want to see how many rows. Okay, and they only have 2, so we're going to have to provide some junk in there, if you remember the junk, quote unquote. So what we're going to do is we're going to say, if we go to the top here, we're going to look at the rows, right? Come on, there we go. So we have employee number. Okay, so that is a number. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, so there's only 6 of them. Okay, perfect. So 6 columns. Boom. Okay, and it's asking us to go ahead and okay, do a union of all records in the employees table and all records in the, okay. So if we do, we're going to do it from departments, right? So, or from the employees table, because that has the most. So we're going to say select everything from the employees, right? And then we're going to say union select, and we're going to say department number, because we need to specify these ones. Department name, and then we're going to say we want, this is 3, 4, 5, 6, right? Because we need 3 from departments. And then go ahead and, we don't even need to do that. We just need to do that. Okay. And we'll say enter. Okay. And we got 663. Now you notice here's the end of them. We got customer service development. Then we have 3, 4, 5, 6. Now that's where I unioned, I combined them. So, and then it tells us the 663 rows. Now, is that correct? Let's see. 663. Boom. There we go. So we unioned the statement. So you can see up here we have the birth dates and all that, our hire dates and the names and all that, but we combined them. So you can see what can happen is if I have access to this database based on the query I'm doing, based on the search field or whatever, I can union, combine, and pull information from other databases. So that's kind of the key here. That's what we're looking for. So we've got that. We submitted it. I believe it worked. Yeah, it's marked out. Okay, let's look at it. So now we're on to the last one, the union injection. So this one, I'm going to go start the box before we start because we've already covered union. So I'm assuming you guys will pick up on this pretty quick. All right, so union injection is the same as before. The difference is how do we view it in an injection environment, not on the database environment. So you can see this is searching for a port. So they're searching for a port for whatever, they're shipping stuff, I don't know. And so we went ahead and they put a quote in there just to cause an error so that we could see what the database looks like. It caused an error. Okay, cool. So now we need to detect the number of columns. This is what we already kind of did. One of the ways we can do it is using order by. So what it is we're going to say order by 1. Okay. And if you look order by 1, it's going to order by this column, or this column, right? Cool. That's fine. I don't care how it orders it. What I'm trying to see is how many columns are there? Because if it's ordered by 2, it'll order by this column, right? That's great. That means there's 2 columns. What if it's, because here's the thing, what people don't realize is, and we'll show it here actually, is we do the same with 3 and 4 and get the results back. However, we try to order by 5 and it doesn't work, so we have 4 columns. Well, we have 4 columns, it's only displaying 3. So what you get back on a website doesn't mean that's all that's in that database. So in order for you to use a union statement, it has to match what's in the database, not what's being displayed to you on the website. Now, some of you may say, why is that the case? And you'll see. So you can see now here they do select 1, 2, 3. Doesn't work because we know there's 4, so they do 4, and they get 2, 3, 4 because they put 1, 2, 3, 4, right? They put these numbers in there. They put junk in there, quote unquote, right? So now we have to know, where do we locate our injection? That's why they number them 1, 2, 3, 4, because look, now I know if I'm going to do my injection, it needs to be in 2, 3, or 4, or else I'm not going to see the data, because if it's in 1, I don't see it, right? And there's many times this might happen. So they did here, they put at version in their database, and it'll give them the version of the database they're using. And you can see it actually printed out here. Now, some of you may say, like, why would you not display the full data? Well, what if one of the columns that you don't want displayed on the website is like the primary key of the database, meaning it's just a reference for other databases, right? I don't need you to see the primary key of the database. So 1 would be labeled out then in that case. So let's go ahead and minimize that, and let's go to this one. All right, well, maybe. Okay, so now we're in. We got the search for a port, right? And what's it say to do? Use a union injection to get the results of user. Okay, so all we got to do is say, basically copy what they did, right? So we can say search for a port. Okay, well, we want to say we're going to do the same thing they did, which is cin. We can actually just copy theirs. Cin, we'll just do this exact one and see if it works. If it works, that means we got 4 columns. We don't have to go chase it down, right? So we're going to do the exact same one. Does it work? It does work. So it's the exact same database. So we have 4 columns, right? So now all we got to do is inject our column somewhere else. So we're going to keep that, and I'm just going to inject it in 3, right? And we're going to say user, because I want to get the information from the results from the user. Okay, so user search, and there you go. That's who I am. That's the SQL command I just ran, which is who am I? What user am I, right? And it's root at local host. So all we did, if you don't fully understand this, it's fine. All we did is we said, okay, search for port cin. Doesn't matter what you search for. You can search for anything here, right? Then we're combining that with select, and we're adding this information 1, which 1 doesn't exist. And then we're saying at version, which is what this result is. Then we're saying 3, which is this result, and then 4. The reason we have to put 1, 2, 3, 4 in there is because the union select statement that we're making doesn't have any data, and the columns have to match. So it doesn't have 4 columns or 5 columns. It only has what we tell it. So we're telling it we want 4 columns to match this so we can do a union statement. So now it's saying, I guess just give it the results, root at local host. All right, there we go. All right, mark that, and we're done. So hopefully this helps you guys. That's going to be it for this video. We are going to finish up with the SQL or the exploitation and the mitigations, and then we will do a whole video on closing out the skill assessment, and we'll knock all of that out. So hopefully this helps you guys. Hopefully you guys like the SQL injections. I think the SQL injection is one of the most fun to do. It's a lot of fun. It's hard. It's a puzzle every time, regardless if you've done it 100 times. So that's what I like about it. Hopefully you guys like it too. Let me know in the comments below. Let me know. Like the video if you haven't yet. You know what I mean? Just like it. Just like it. All right. Thanks, guys. Have a good one.